there, folks. This is Bob. I'm not out at Serenity Hill. I'm actually out at Double Anchor Farms, where a guy who owns the place has let me come cut trees down, and I've just got a cedar down. Thought I'd show you. I don't have a tripod to show me to get some action shots, but at any rate, this is a tree that I just cut down. It's about a 30-foot tree. I used 25 of it. The last 4 or 5 feet at the top just isn't really usable for me. But you can see here all this pile of branches here and this pile of branches here. That's all the stuff that I had to cut off of this in order to get this bare log that I'm now going to cut down into 17.5-inch long logs. And then I'll take these back and get the bark peeled off of them, put them in the kiln. And the reason why I'm cutting them to 17.5 inches instead of 16 is that way if my cuts aren't straight, I can use the miter saw to straighten them up and get rid of the rough, the rough saw marks from the chainsaw and get the smoother look inside. Some people like the rougher, rustic look. I like the look of them smoother. The wood grain shows up better. So that's what I'm out here doing today. I've already got one down and stacked up. Now, I can't get my truck all the way down here. I did it once. Once I brought my truck down this far, and I ended up losing both running boards and ran up on a stump, and the truck pitched to the right, and it took off the door handle on the rear passenger door on the truck, and did a little damage to the truck bed, kind of smushed in a little. So I'm going to be carrying these unless the guy who I wait for the guy who owns the place. He's supposed to be here around 2. Maybe he'll have pity on me and bring his side by down here, and I can load it up instead of having to carry these by arm. But so yeah, sometimes if you want it bad enough, you got to come out and work for it. All right, that's enough of that. I'm going to get to cutting, and when I get back home, I'll show you the stack of logs I got. Now, I am back at Serenity Hill. That's the logs I got yesterday, that stack of them, and then I went back today, and if I can get this open. Okay, I had to switch to my right hand. I could not get it to open with my left hand. Boy, I got to be careful with my right hand because anything happens to that sucker, I'm in trouble, man. Anyway, this is what I brought home today. So I'm getting ready to unload the truck and then get to running the pressure washer, get the bark knocked off these things, get them in the kiln. Got to pick up some more materials because I've only got enough mortar to make about 1, maybe 2 batches of mortar. So got to run and pick up some more mortar and lime and sand. That'll be about 650 pounds. And then on Thursday and Friday, I'll be putting cordwood in that kitchen wall, the blank space there. I'll be putting cordwood in there. And then Saturday, back out at the farmer's market and see if we can sell a few things. So just busy out here. That's what it takes to get the wood into there, is I got to go out in the woods and cut it down. Now, one of the things that I was fortunate about this time, the guy who owns the place where I'm going and cutting my cedar trees down, he He has a little jewel of a tractor. He has a Mahindra tractor. I think it's like a 26, 28 horse, whatever. But at any rate, got a little Mitsubishi diesel engine in it. Um, and it's got a bucket on the front. So yesterday he hooked me up and he said, "Hey, I'm going to make your life easier because there were some places down some old logging roads." I said, "Yeah, I walked down a couple of those roads. There's some trees down there." I said, "But man, I'm not going to try to drive my truck down those because they're new logging roads. Get a few rains on them, give them a couple of years, while I'll take the truck down. But right now they're just too deeply rutted from the big skidders that they use to go out in the woods and pull the logs out." He said, "No problem." He says, "I'll hook you up with my little tractor." He said, "I got the hay spear on it. Let me slap the bucket on it, and you can use that." So I was able to get to a place today, and that's where about half of this came from. I was able to get to a place that I would not have been able to get to in the truck, and there's no way I want to pack that stuff out, one armload at a time for over a quarter of a mile. So those trees were going to live. So, at any rate, that's kind of nice when somebody, not only is he letting me take cedar off his property. Get started with some more cordwood. I don't know if you can tell this is a column that's between the kitchen and the dining room, and I'll be putting some logs that'll cover this column. So you see my timbers from the outside, but you don't see them from the inside. On the inside, you've got pretty much uninterrupted cordwood wall on the inside of the house. Some people like the beams and everything on the inside, and I thought about getting some more timbers and sistering up here, putting on the inside, so I had timbers in and out. But I really like the look of the uninterrupted walls. It gives more options design wise, and it also gives more options as far as placing furniture and placing pictures and things like that, because if you've got these timbers here, I'm a symmetry kind of guy, and if you've got these timbers and you place something so it looks right between furniture, well, then it could end up being off center between timbers, and I would just have a real hard time looking at that. So I don't run into that on an uninterrupted wall. That's my own weirdness, but anyways, they call it OCD, but I think it's normal. So I've got my felt paper down. This is really important. If you're building on a slab, concrete slab, you have to put the felt paper down because concrete will wick moisture. And if you don't have this felt paper, then the moisture will wick up through the concrete and condensation, and it'll get on your mortar, and then it'll wick up into the logs. So you don't want that. I'm on pier and beam, so I don't have that issue, but I went ahead and used this black paper anyway. It does two things. One, I know I'm not going to have any issue with condensation or moisture wicking up. Second thing it does for me, believe it or not, is instead of having to draw a chalk line on the floor, so I make sure I've got my first course lined up, which is really important, because if your first course isn't straight, then it's going to be hard to keep the rest of them straight. So this paper, it's 16 inches from the outside edge to inside, and that's the thickness of my wall. So I know if I keep my mortar and my first course lined up with this black tar paper, that my first course is going to be straight. So, and I don't have to worry about covering up a line or it moving away. This stays where it is. So that's part of why I do it. And then I've got one window in this wall, and I don't know if it shows up in the picture, but over here, to my left of the window, I've got a 2x4 that goes up to the edge of a window to help support it. The top of it is held up by the header up there. And I just realized I didn't put a key here, so I am going to have to go grab my nails and strip of wood and put a key here to help lock this in. All right, so basically what I'm using for keys is just some scrap wood, and I'll come in about an inch from the side and probably turn this up on end, and I'll do it this way. Come in about an inch from the side, and then the mortar will go around it. That'll give me a little bit thicker bead here, but that's all right. And then I'll measure another piece and put in up to the top. But this is what I could do without getting on a ladder. Now, that's why I always keep my safety glasses on my hat, is that way they're handy when I need them. I don't have to look for them. One of the few smart things that I do, because I never use a nail gun without the glasses. And there you see a good example of why. There's a lot of air that is released from these things. And it'll kick stuff up. And it's possible sometimes even one might hit and break or warp or kick back. And safety glasses are cheap insurance for your eyes. You need your safety glasses when you're doing a nail gun. And the nails that I'm using for this, since this is treated timber that I'm going into, these are hot dip galvanized nails that I'm using that are made for use in treated wood. If I just used a regular nail, like I'd be going into this dry pine, pine 2x4s that you use for framing. If I use those same nails that weren't coated, the treating and the pressure treated could over time cause those to corrode and come out or break. So you don't want that to happen. So use the right fasteners. All right, I'll put that down. And then, of course, the first thing is to spray. Just get this wet so it doesn't suck too much moisture up from my mortar. And I'm only going to go about 3 feet or so on this first course. And then I'll come in and I'll do the inside. Reason being is it seems like the first course, because you're having to cover such a wide strip, the mortar doesn't go as far. And I could go most of the way across. This is a little over 8 foot, about 8.5 foot. I could go most of the way across, but then the logs would just be sitting there and there wouldn't be anything in between the logs. And I found that when I do that, when I come back the next day, if it's the next day and I put mortar down in between logs and tie it in, that I end up seeing a little line there. So this way I can fill in between the logs. I don't have to worry about them moving or shifting or anything like that. And then I'll continue on down the way with my next one, and we'll see how much I get done today. So, and again, this is about, if you haven't watched anything on doing the mortar, it's about a 3-inch bead, and this mortar is actually pretty good consistency wise. And then I just bring it up until it's flush with the outside timber. Make sure I get enough to go around the key, and I'll go about an inch and a half thick here, and just make sure to get it good and packed and good and straight, because this is the foundation for the whole wall. And this mortar actually came out pretty good today. It's about as close to ideal consistency as I've been getting. And when I first started out, I had a little gauge that I would use to kind of slip over and make sure I had it the right width and the like. But after you've done it for a while, uh, you get more used to it, and you can judge fairly well, and it speeds it up versus using a gauge. And then I'll do this on this side, and that's all the technique there is to it. Just put it down and smooth it out. On this first course, I try to get as uniform a thickness and width as I can, because like I said, this is the foundation for the whole rest of the wall. So I want it to be right. And I used to do all my mortar from inside, and then reach over to the outside, and then my outside always looked terrible, and I was always having to redo. And someone suggested, well, when I'm doing that, here's one of those wires. When I'm doing that, I always take about half my batch outside and do the outside from the outside and the inside from the inside. And I thought, that just makes a whole lot of sense. And so I started doing that. It's more up and down and around, but I end up with a better result. I don't know if you can see it very well or not, but if you're doing cordwood, one of these things is really handy. This is a mechanic's creeper seat, and this is one that's adjustable height. Woo-hoo. And it means that I'm bending my back. But I tell you what, for me, getting down on my knees is hard. It's hard on my knees, and it's hard getting back up. So I use the creeper seat. It lets me get around, scooch around, do what I need to do. And it's just a whole lot easier on me. Okay, so I'll do the same thing here. Now I'm joining up with mortar from the previous wall, as this wall on the kitchen is tying into the dining room. And so I have to spray down that mortar real well, because I've got dry mortar and I'm going to be putting wet mortar next to it. So I'll put quite a bit of water on that. Otherwise, it'll just suck the water right out of the mortar I put down. And I just put some on the felt here too for good measure. And I'll go right about to this upright, and then fill with insulation and start putting logs on. And again, this there's my bucket for my water. And I've got kind of tight confines here. I got electrical cables for the kitchen island on the floor here, and I've got a bunch of electrical wires here. These are for my wall outlets. So as I get going, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 just on this wall that I'm going to have to notch logs for the boxes to fit in. So fortunately, I've gotten fairly quick at that. And then I always sweep the floor where I'm going to be putting mortar in, so I don't get dirt and stuff trapped up in it. And then dial up there. And yeah, you always spray the previous work and other logs. You always want to spray those real well, so that you don't suck all the moisture out of it, and so that it join better. Most places you can't really tell where one section joins another. Sometimes you'll see a little line there, but most of the time not. And right about now, I'm questioning if leaning is actually any easier. The only thing is, it's easier to get up from a stool. And again, I'm going about 3 inches wide, about an inch thick, probably a generous inch. And then I'll have to fill that up. And I'm famous for having way too much stuff in my workspace. You got to have a place to put all this stuff. And this mortar, this is about as dry as I would want mortar to be and still be workable. But if the mortar is too soft, too thin when you put it in, it won't hold its shape when you put the logs on it, and it squishes and kind of flows out. And then you gotta correct that. And again, I'm just lining it up with that black paper, and I kind of pat the edges smooth. If I pat the edges smooth as I'm putting it in, then my water bucket. It's a bucket I'm going to be using for dipping the ends of the logs in. And then I've got my plumbing there. I would normally be facing the wall, but since the camera's there, I'm going at a little bit different angle. And I don't know if you need to or not. I kind of compress it into a log about the shape and width that I need. So when I put it down, it's just a matter of kind of flatten it out, smooth it in shape, making sure it's lined up. And again, it amazes me how much mortar it takes doing this first row on the wall. And I guess that's because you're covering the whole thing instead of just down in between logs on top. I don't know. And again, you can use the side of your finger, of course wearing gloves, kind of smooth and pack the mortar as it's going in. And I need about half a handful here. And we'll see how far I go on my logs. And again, that's okay. That gets me about 3 foot, only 5 foot more to go on this wall. And now I'll take my gloves off and get out my insulation. See, that's so much easier. You know, they say if you want to find the best way to do a job, give it to your laziest guy. You'll go find your best way to do the job. Certainly the easiest way to do the job. And bust this up and then just throw that insulation down in there. Smooth it out. Whew. Normally I got a little breeze blowing and it blows the dust and stuff away. Today I don't. I also need a dust mask. Most of the time there's a wind coming out of the south, which would be to my back, and it blows the
it blows the dust away, but I don't have a breeze today. Whew. It's probably why I'm sweating so bad. Of course, wouldn't you know, I don't know if you can hear it or not, but in the background, I got a fan blowing, and it's blowing the opposite direction of where I am. I was finishing up construction on a couple items for the farmers market. Um, it's amazing what you can do if you just use your imagination a little bit. Um, I had about half of a fence picket left, which is about $1. Fence pickets are, I think they're $2.18. The green pressure treated uh, fence pickets, $2.18. Which isn't bad. I mean, it's not as cheap as they were before COVID, but nothing is as cheap as it was before COVID. So, anyways, I was thinking, what am I going to do with this half fence picket? And so I built a little birdhouse. Stands about 10 inches tall. The back of it's about 10 inches tall. And then it's got a space at the top where you can nail it to a tree or somewhere. And then the birdhouse itself, a little 2-inch opening. It's a pretty neat little thing. All right. So I got those down. Got the insulation in. Now, get my water bucket. I take my logs and dump it in, get it wet, and then set that in place. Now this is a partial log. This is for covering this timber. And I know you probably can't see any of that. I got too much stuff in the way. But then I just start picking and choosing logs. And I got them kind of halfway laid out in a way that I thought would look nice. Again, I'm just dipping it to get it wet, and then just set it in place. And as I get going along here, I'm using my bottom line as a reference here. But as I get going along here, what I'll do is I've got me a piece of wood I'll hang from my window frame here, and I'm able to use it to kind of keep these lined up straight. You look at some of my first walls, and they're not really straight, but they get better as time goes on. And that's why, all the gurus will tell you that before you build a cordwood house, it would be a good idea to build a practice structure. Well, I didn't have wood, material, or time to build a practice structure. So the back wall of my house is my practice structure. So, and I kind of mix them up. I got some round logs and some half logs and some angled logs. And again, just get it good and wet. Tap it down into the mortar some, and then I'll come along with what I've got left in my bucket and do some fill in between. And this is one of the half logs. And then I need one more. Oh, here's a good one. All right. And again, it's just, cordwood's, it's more art than it is science. I mean, there's science in mixing the mortar and doing some of the stuff, but as far as placing the logs, it's really kind of an art thing. And what I'm doing here is I'm placing this log. This is a quarter log, and I'm just pressing that, put that up against the post, and then the next one will go on the other side of the post. This is 1.5 inches, and that way my mortar bead in between there will be a little over 1.5 inches, which is about, I try to keep inch and a half mortar beads so it won't show that much. But then, so that I don't have a straight line of mortar going up here, what I'll do is I'll take a couple of these logs, and like I might take one like this, and I'll put it up here, and I'll mark it, and then I'll take my Sawzall, and I'll cut a notch out, and that way the log will kind of go envelop this center support, so I don't have a straight line of mortar running up there. It looks more natural, and you would never know that there's a 2x4 running through the wall that's helping to support this windowsill. So it's just one of the things that you do. I think they call that a pass-through log. It's a pretty common thing. One of the things I'm going to have to remember, though, is to bring this down. I've got a couple outlets here. One's for a dishwasher and one's for a garbage disposal, just in case she decides somewhere along the line that she wants those. I'll already have the outlets here. All right. So now, my bucket out of the way, and then I will just make a mess. I will just start kind of dropping mortar down in between logs here. And then I'll go to the outside, do the same, and then it'll be time to tuck point.